Hey everybody, Travis here with the Alpine Geek. In this video I want to show you some of the just cool features of this website called windy.com, which has some really cool and powerful visualizations for helping you analyze weather patterns and make weather decisions that I think is probably superior to other websites and techniques that I've seen. So let's jump right in. What I want to do is figure out for this weekend, A, should I go out on Saturday or Sunday? And then B, where would be the best place to go? And then finally, what can I expect once I've decided where I'm going to go and on which day? Okay, so this is the default view here in Windy. The default visualization is wind, which is not terribly useful for us, but we will see how this can be quite helpful. So the first thing I'm going to do, what I always do whenever I use any of these tools, is I'm going to log in. So in the top right corner of the screen is the login. And you just log in. If you don't have an account, you should register for one because it's free and they don't send you spam emails, so highly recommend it. So go ahead and log in. And what logging in does is lets me see favorites. So you can see I've got 5 favorites set here: Rainier, Snoqualmie and Stevens Pass, and the Teanaway and the Enchantments. And what I can do quickly at a glance is go to this little hamburger icon in the top left for the menu, and I can select those favorites. So it defaults to the menu. I can go over next to it and hit the favorites. And what that does is brings up just kind of a very high-level summary for each of my favorites. And so at a glance, I can see that Sunday looks better than Saturday because Saturday's looking like rain, 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 snow, snow. Sunday is rain, partly sunny, snow, partly sunny, partly sunny. So clearly, just by looking at the overviews, I can see that Sunday's probably going to be the day that I pick. Now, what location would I want on that Sunday? Probably not Snoqualmie Pass. Rain's not fun. Rainier might be good, but then you see it's got 4 days of rain, so maybe not. But Teanaway's looking pretty good, and the Enchantments are looking pretty good, which kind of makes sense because they're so close to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, I think I'll go to the Teanaway. So I can close this now because that's helped me choose. And by the way, if I wanted to add a favorite anywhere I want, I could just right-click on the map, show the weather picker, and click Add to Favorites. And I can add it to a favorite. And now it'll show up right here. And then I can rename it if I want to. Right. So then it'll appear along with the other hearts, and you'll have it in your summary. So basically, if there's a list of summits that you want to go to, add each one of those summits as your favorites, and then when you're planning your weekend, you can look at the 5-day forecast and see, okay, of all the places I want to go, which one has the best weather? I'm going to go ahead and delete that random favorite because was just for an example. And I can close this left-hand panel. All right, so we decided we're going to go to the Teanaway. By the way, this little flag thing is called the weather picker. And I can make that appear by right-clicking and saying Show Weather Picker. And so the weather picker lets you drag, and it displays the numeric value for whatever visualization you're displaying. So since the default in Windy is wind, it's showing the wind value at that point. And we'll play around with some of the visualizations here in a little bit, but for right now, we're just going to kind of focus in on the Teanaway here. So now that we've decided that we're going to go to the Teanaway, I want to look at the weekend forecast. So I'm going to pull this up by right-clicking and saying forecast for this location. Or I can just click this little down caret icon. But when I do that, I lose my flag, so you could also just right-click forecast for this location, which preserves your weather picker. All right. Bottom line, get the forecast to show up. So now I've got the forecast up. If I look at this forecast, it looks like, oh, well, Saturday and Sunday both look sunny, and in fact, Saturday looks sunnier. So maybe Saturday's better. And then just kind of looking at this, I can see that, well, if I could take work off on Monday, that might even be the best, because that's just straight up sunny. But, constraining ourselves to the weekend, we'll say, well, it's Saturday or Sunday, let's figure out what. Now, one of the things, you see this visualization. The visualization is based on this time right here, where it says 10 p.m. on Wednesday. So as I drag this, the visualization updates. So once we start working with the visualizations here on the right-hand side, where this orange time marker is placed will make a big difference. But for right now, it doesn't matter so much because we're just looking at the basic forecast. All right. So I've got my forecast pulled up for this location, and I can see what it is over the next several days, and in particular what it is on Sunday. And I've got sort of the basic weather, temperature, rain, wind, gusts, wind direction, etc. One of the things I can do, and one of the nice features in windy.com, is that it has more than one weather model. So these things down here at the bottom where it says ECMWF, GFS, Meteo Blue, and NAM, these all are different weather models. And so I could click through them and see what the different weather models are predicting if I really wanted to. But what I use more often than not is I'll use ECMWF as the default, but then I can pull up this compare, the final option, compare, which brings up all of those weather forecasts simultaneously, as well as a text-based description of the pros and cons. So for that ECMWF, what I said was my default, and is in fact Windy's default. It says that it's the very accurate model provided by the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasts, clear winner compared to other forecast models, and since it's commercial, only a few companies in the world offer it. So there you have it. Now, why would I want to look at the screen? Okay, remember, before I said, well, Saturday or Sunday looked fine, and in fact, Saturday looked sunnier, so why don't we go with Saturday? Well, let's look at this comparison view. Saturday, one of the forecast models says rain, sun, snow, and rain. So there's clearly not a lot of consensus. And what I tend to do is look at that as, well, these are the range of possibilities. It could be anywhere from snowing to raining to sunny. And those are not odds I want to take, especially when two of those are saying rain. Instead, let's look at Sunday. I've got partly sunny, partly sunny, partly sunny with a little bit of snow, and partly sunny. So at least I can say that on Sunday, there is agreement among the forecasts that it's going to be A, not raining, and B, somewhat sunny. So based on the sort of agreement amongst the forecasts, I would hedge my bets towards Sunday as opposed to Saturday, where there's a lot of discrepancy in the forecasts. Okay, and then I can just click X and it'll go back down to just that single selected forecast. The other kind of cool thing I can do here is these buttons down here in the bottom middle are the different forecast models, but the buttons on the bottom left are the different forecast types. And you can click through them all on your own. tend to use the basic one. And then the other one that I find somewhat interesting for planning trips is this third one called the Meteogram. So when I click on that, it has a lot of the information from the basic model, but it also has this visualization of cloud levels. And I can look here on Saturday and see, well, this was the one that said it's going to be sunny. But prior to it being sunny, there's a lot of low-lying clouds. And then on Sunday, the clouds are much lighter, and they're up higher. So if I want to get a visualization beyond just this little cartoon cloud, which isn't all that descriptive, I can get a more visual representation of what the cloud levels might be in the area by looking at this Meteogram forecast. And again, it shows that, man, if I could just go out on Monday, that would be the best. All right. That's almost it for this forecast area. The last thing I will say is a cool little feature here in Windy is this webcams in vicinity, which is right above the forecast. So if I click that, obviously this isn't a forecast, but it's going to show any webcams that are closest to this particular place. Now, it can be a little tricky. Unfortunately, it doesn't really, well, it does actually. So here as I'm hovering on this one, which is clearly Leavenworth, and you can see the Christmas lights, if you look up on the visualization where it says Leavenworth on the map, you can see this sort of camera icon that's zooming in and out. So you can see where the camera is. Although it can be tricky. So this one here is over by Cle Elum. And then here's one near Leavenworth, etc. So as you hover over these webcams, you kind of have to hunt for it, but you can see where that camera is located on the map, which can just be very useful for getting a sense of what are the road conditions like. Snoqualmie Pass is a great one to look at the webcams for before you go driving across it, right? So just a kind of a cool little extra feature of windy.com. It's always present conditions. Obviously, you can't see what a forecast would be, but for the day of the trip, it can be helpful if there are webcams. All right. I'm now going to close the forecast because we're going to move into using the visualization layers, and the forecast just gets in the way. So red X, and down it goes. And I still have the timeline, so I can still drag the timeline wherever I want. So we said we are looking at Sunday. Now the thing you'll notice as I'm dragging this timeline is that the visualization's updating. So it is showing you, the visualization is showing you what the projected values are for that selected time. And we can use that to kind of scrub through the entire day and see how that particular parameter is going to evolve over the course of the day, or at least how it's projected to evolve. Now, the default visualization in windy.com is wind, hence the name, but that's not terribly useful for us. It might be in certain circumstances, but generally the two sort of categories I find most useful are the precipitation layers and the cloud layers, because when it comes to me and hiking, I would love it to not be raining and not be socked in. And so those are the two things I tend to focus on most, but there are a whole host of layers in windy.com that you can explore. And you can look at all of them by going right here to where it says more layers at the bottom. And if you click on that, it's got a whole bunch of layers you could turn on and explore. I think I have all the ones I want to showcase here already turned on. And if you find that more layers doesn't appear, it's because you have the forecast up. So if you go over here and you're like, where's my extra layers? Close the forecast, and then more layers will appear. So that's a little hint, a little tip. All right, let's start actually exploring Tianwei. If I zoom in enough, I'm going to get sort of a hiking view, which can be nice. But none of the visualizations work on the hiking view except for the wind. So if you're in the hiking view, you're going to need to zoom out enough to where you actually get the visualization. And what I'm going to show, first of all, we're going to click on rain and thunder. And there you go. It's showing, if I zoom out a little, not a whole lot of rain for Sunday. That's at 7 a.m., which, let's say noon. All right, so there's a little isolated bits of rain, and I can drag the picker over there to see what those are, but that's not a lot of rain. Unless you go way out east. And even then, that's not a lot of rain. It's another nice thing about having your area with the marked with a favorite is that it's easy to get back to when you drag off of it to explore something. So that's the rain and thunder. But another thing I like to look at is rain accumulation. So the rain and the snow accumulation layers are different in that you no longer have the timeline that you can scrub through. It's all based on accumulation from the time you're looking at it. So this being Wednesday, and I'm contemplating something on Sunday, I might look at the next 5 days. And what I can see by looking at, okay, state of Washington over the next 5 days, of my favorites, 3 of them are getting more rain than Tianwei or the enchantments. So 0.18 inches over the next 5 days, as opposed to half an inch in those other places. Which means, you know, even if Rainier was going to be sunny on that particular day that I plan to be there, it's also rained a bunch, and that could play into your planning. Because if you're going somewhere, you plan to go rock scrambling, and it's had a ton of rain leading up to your trip, then even if it's sunny on that particular day that you're going to be there, it might be muddy or just slick and gross. So it's something to consider. Similarly, just as they have for rain accumulation, you can do the same thing with snow and see where's snow projected to be building up. No surprise, Rainier, North Cascades, but not so much in the Tianwei or the passes, which probably upsets the skiers out there. A couple inches at Stevens, less than an inch here at Tianwei. So, and you can even say, okay, well, about over the next 10 days, if you want to get a sense for that. But since our trip falls within the next 5-ish days, we will just stick to that. And I can see that, yeah, there's not going to be a whole bunch of snow accumulation, at least projected. Reality could be very different. Okay, so I can see how much rain is projected to accumulate, how much snow is projected to accumulate, and then one thing that everyone's always interested in the wintertime especially, is snow depth. So when I do this, it unsurprisingly shows that the most snow at Rainier in the North Cascades, and snow starting to build up. And so the snow depth layer, it does put you back into that timeline. So as you drag to the right, you would expect the snow depth to accumulate. So it's thinking that next Thursday and Friday, cross your fingers, there's going to be a decent amount of snow accumulating. But for Sunday, not so much. And I can look at that and be like, okay. So notice that it shows the snow depth and the snow density. So I'm not an expert on snow densities, but the basic concept here is that more consolidated snow will be higher density snow. So if I drag this over here to Rainier, it has a snow density that's near 200. Or up here in the North Cascades, again, over 200. Over 2 feet of snow, higher density, more consolidated. The lower this density number is, you would expect conditions that are more powder-like. Now again, the big caveat here is that these are forecast projections, and reality may not live up to them. But you could say, okay, well, I would expect the snow here in the Teanaway, although not a whole lot of it, to be maybe more powdery than what I would have seen if I went to Rainier. And you can turn on thunderstorms, which isn't that much different than the generic rain layer. But yeah. All right. So that's how we can kind of explore precipitation leading up to our trip and on the day of our trip. And in fact, if we were to, since this isn't a day of appreciable amount of rain, scrubbing through the timeline doesn't really make a big difference. But on those rainy days, it can and will. But what we will see when we look for this particular day is when we look at the cloud layers. So I turn on clouds, and I can see, okay, 59% here in Teanaway where we're planning to go, 93% Stevens, 78, 50, 49. So pretty cloudy, and I can kind of, again, scrub that timeline to sort of see that the clouds kind of linger all day long. So they're not going to blow over. They're not going anywhere. I can expect significant cloud cover all day, which doesn't mean it's going to be a bad day. Just so clouds is one thing, but what I really try to avoid are low clouds. So I can turn on the low clouds layer, and it looks about the same, unfortunately. But it won't always. Sometimes the clouds are very high up in the area that you're projected to be, which is great. I love high clouds because it means I don't have to worry as much about wearing sunglasses and sunscreen, and yet I still get unrestricted views, which is fantastic. In this case, the clouds are low clouds. That's sometimes just how it goes. And again, you can scrub through and see that, yeah, the low clouds fluctuate a bit, so there might be some views in there. The other thing you might want to look at is the cloud base, which is a little wonkier, a little less intuitive, I think, in part because it has these weird jagged edges and just sort of feels incomplete. But it is something you can look at. It's also something you could see on that Meteogram, but it basically says, hey, what's the base height of the clouds? And so 1,000 feet in Teanaway means, yeah, not good things. And then finally, visibility, which is maybe the holy grail for mountain, at least for mountain climbing. So I can see right now in the morning, well, 4 a.m. before we start, but Teanaway, 49 square miles. That's not lovely. But as I go through the day, it fluctuates. And the idea is you kind of scrub through the day, looking kind of at your favorites and see, are there any that are in sort of an island of gray, i.e. no color on them? The worst color is pink, the best color is gray. So if you see that one of your favorites is in sort of like an island of gray all day long, then maybe that's what. I mean, just looking at Rainier looks pretty good in this view, other than early in the morning. But Teanaway doesn't look too bad itself. So just a couple tools that you can use. The rain layers, the cloud layers can be quite helpful in allowing you to sort of decide between multiple possibilities. There are other things you can do. There's air quality and so forth, but yeah. I'll leave it up to you to kind of explore those. You could turn on the precipitation type as well. So if I go to the rain and thunder, I can look at precipitation type, which for Sunday is not very interesting. But if I were to go, say, into that storm here, that's projected to be Tuesday, you can see from the scale, a lot of rain, but also some wet snow and wet snow. So that might just make it easier to see, okay, I don't care whether it's rain or snow, I just care if it's precipitating on me. If that's all you want to see, then this precipitation type layer could be very useful. So you can see that Wednesday night looks like it's going to be atrocious. That apparently is the big snowstorm is anticipated for Wednesday night. Yeah. So you can explore any of these to your heart's content. Some of these are intended for other activities than hiking, ocean activities, or even paragliding. So there's a lot more capabilities than we're covering in this, and that's fine. The only one of the temperature ones that I think is kind of interesting is possibly the freezing altitude, especially when you think about springtime, glacier travel conditions. Seeing a map of freezing altitude might be useful, because you want to preferably go somewhere where it's going to freeze overnight so that you have better conditions for your crampons in the morning. And so while raw temperature may not be something that's terribly useful, because if it's winter everywhere in Washington, but looking at something like freezing altitude might be useful for your trip planning. All right, that essentially covers the broad features of windy.com and sort of how you can systematically apply these to help you make decisions about where you want to go on trips and how your trip turns out. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you next time.